So JUCK over.
We cannot allow everything to be stripped away from us because they change the formats around us, the traditions, the stadiums, the uniforms, the rivalries. We allow them to devalue it. We lose a lot of what makes college football special. Don't let them do it. Don't let them devalue what it means to you. I don't know. Maybe it's just my age. And welcome into JUCK on Bucks on a Wednesday morning from a freezing cold Buckeyes Studios, Akron, Ohio. I've got my trusty Rose Bowl scarf and a ball cap on today to keep me warm. Hopefully my energy can warm me up a little bit more because it is quite cold down here. I've even got my space heater. It's not working so well. But a big show we got today because we didn't have a show yesterday. Yesterday we just had an update. If you missed it, we'll recap that. But today we go into the cornerback room, and this will be the final position group entering into the spring. We've covered all the rest of them. Today we're at corners. We've got some big-time battles going on in the cornerback room. We've got some big-time recruits in the class of 2026. We're going to go over all that and also what has become, in my opinion, the single biggest must-win, most compelling recruiting battle in the class of 2026 that takes place with Tim Walton in that cornerback room. So I want to clarify something before we go any further. The other day, I flippantly said cornerback, my least favorite position. And some of you took that to mean I was taking a shot at Ohio State's cornerback room. That's not what I meant. What I meant was from a football playing standpoint, from the game standpoint, cornerback is my least favorite position. And I'll explain why. If you are the very best cornerback, the whole goal is you don't even want the quarterback to look your way. You want to take away that whole side of the field. He doesn't even have the option to throw it to your side of the field. Like, that's the goal for the best of the best. You are playing a reactionary position. The receiver knows where he's going. You don't. That can often make you look silly. You look at a guy like Denzel Burke. This guy's whole reputation changed in one game. He was thought to be a shutdown corner. He has one bad game, and then people talk about him like he sucks. That's a tough position, man. You spend a lot of your time backpedaling, which I've never enjoyed myself. You rarely get to line up and smack somebody. When you do make a tackle, you're kind of just rapping. If you do get to come forward, it's because the first and second level of the defense screwed up, in which case you're giving up big yards. It's just the least fun. It's the least fun position on a football field, in my opinion. But I love our corners. And of course, I love OG Walt, a Buckeye from Columbus, Georgia, 53 years old. Look, Ohio State's got some popular coaches, man. Popular with the fans, popular with the players. There is none that is more popular with the players than Tim Walton. But I think because Tim Walton played in 1990, 91, 92, 93, a cornerback that had 10 interceptions in his Buckeye career, but because he played a little bit longer ago, a lot of fans don't recognize that he is, in fact, a Buckeye alum. And I just feel like, Laurinaitis and Heartline get all that love from the fan base, not so much Walt. But it's awesome that Ohio State has 3 of their 10 countable coaches, former Buckeyes, 30% of the staff. That's a really strong number. I think that probably rivals anybody around the country as far as when we look at other people's staffs, how many alumni they have on their staff. But Tim Walton, been a DB coach, been a running backs coach, been a defensive coordinator in his career, in both the college and the NFL ranks. And his early college coaching career stops at Memphis, Bowling Green, Syracuse, LSU, Miami. Then he went up to the NFL in 2009, starting with the Lions, coaching DBs there. Went to the Rams in 2013. He was the defensive coordinator for those Rams, coached for the Giants, the Jaguars for a couple of seasons before coming back to Ohio State in 2022. And currently the co-defensive coordinator, secondary, and cornerbacks coach at Ohio State. Now that Jim Knowles is gone, the nickel, in my opinion, the nickel's a corner. Jim Knowles referred to the nickels as a safety. The nickel is a safety, right? The nickel has always been a corner. It just is easier in my mind. So I didn't break down the nickel with the safeties. I'm putting the nickel back in the cornerback room in my mind. So we will be discussing the nickel today. So in 2024, you had Davis Igbinosun and Denzel Burke as your boundary corners. And about midway through the year, after that Oregon game, actually, is when we started seeing quite a bit more of second-year Jermaine Matthews last year. And of course, you had your starting nickel, Jordan Hancock, who was just outstanding. But this crew last year in 2024, they gave up 167 yards a game, which was third in the country, and they were sixth in the country in yards allowed per pass attempt. And again, this is a team that beat 6 of the top 8 teams in the country, not a team that played 2 top teams and then racked up easy stats against bums. This team got tested more than any team in the history of college football in one season. And coming out with numbers like that, they were fantastic, but we don't need numbers to know that. We watched them play. We got IGB coming back, and a lot of people just kind of reactionary were a little irritated about that. They wanted IGB to move on, and that has to do with his penalties. Obviously, his penalty numbers are kind of unbelievable when you put it into context. Like, this guy's got more penalties single-handedly than other teams' entire defenses. It's pretty ridiculous. It's almost like a mental block. I just don't get it. I don't think we ever will. He practices with oven mitts at times, and he just can't seem to keep his hands to himself. However, there are a whole lot of good things about this man. Very physical. He gets into people's heads. He's long. He's annoying. He loves to hit. He's a sure tackler, and he gets the job done at a pretty elite level, which is why he was probably going to be a second-round draft pick had he gone out. There are a lot of times when we get a guy who has maybe like a second or third round NFL draft grade that has a guy coming up behind him that the fans are really eager to see. And then you get that second or third round guy, IGB in this scenario, who announces he's coming back for his senior year. And we see this every now and again, and you'll see, the fans kind of get irritated. Like, I don't want to see him again. I want to see that guy. And I get it. I've been guilty of it a lot of times when I get excited about a guy who hasn't proven anything. But ultimately, we're talking about a dude who has proven something. Like, this is a top draft pick here, top 60 draft pick in the NFL. And being able to get that guy back and get more experience underneath him before those guys have to step into their role, that's a huge win for the Buckeyes. Certainly a huge win. Now, in this situation, replacing Denzel Burke, who's gone off to the NFL draft, and Jordan Hancock, it makes getting IGB back even that much more important, assuming he starts at his normal spot at boundary corner. And starting opposite him, the front runner, obviously, for this position is going to be Jermaine Matthews, who, in my opinion, and a lot of your opinions, was actually the better cover corner than Denzel Burke last year. Now, not close in the run game. Denzel, a dog in the run game. Of course, a little older and more physically mature. Jermaine needs more work on that. But what we do know is these two, as a starting cornerback tandem, IGB and Jermaine Matthews, make up a pretty formidable duo as one of the best units in the country, the two of them. That's a hell of a tandem. And we also know that when it comes to trash talking, these are two of the best as well. I mean, IGB trash talked a guy into spitting on him, and Jermaine Matthews has an even bigger mouth. I saw Jermaine Matthews catch a tow truck driver outside the Woody, shirtless in his flip-flops. The tow truck driver was about to tow his Mercedes for not having his parking pass, and he was out there recording himself with the tow truck driver. Like, I'm at work, and they're trying to tow my car. It was hilarious. He talked his way out of it, which was cool, but the dude's a character, man. He's a fun football player, and I'm really looking forward to seeing him out there. Now, who's your nickel? Well, last year you had Lorenzo Styles as your first up after Jordan Hancock. And this position right here, more than any on the team, is what I've heard maybe the most concerning from the JUCK crew. Lorenzo Styles, this is a veteran. This is a guy in his fifth and final year, and he was 2 years a wide receiver, and then the last 2 at corner. A really smart dude, a very good athlete. He was a 4-star, top 150 commit out of high school when he headed to Notre Dame. A guy who ran the 100 and the 200 in high school. Sub 11 second 100 meter, which is very good. 6 foot 194. Same size as Hancock, but he's always appeared to me to be a little bit smaller. I think that might be because I've seen so many pictures of him with his brother, and everybody looks small next to Sonny. I actually did a short last year. That's like a TikTok, but for YouTube, it's called a short. And it was a picture of Lorenzo Styles, Sonny Styles, Jack, and Ty Hamilton together, the Pickerington crew. And Sonny made Jack look small in this picture. I don't know if it was angles or whatnot. Maybe I'll splice it in here at the end. But it was amazing. Like, Sonny is just so big. And Lorenzo's always by him. So I've always had the impression that Lorenzo's like, 5'9", 5'10". He's not. He's a full 6 foot. But I don't think that Lorenzo showed us last year that he's a high-level starter at Ohio State yet. Doesn't mean he can't get there. Doesn't mean he won't get there this year. But he is the obvious front runner for that job. I do think if there was somebody that was obvious to be pushing him for that role, that we'd be talking about it a lot more, and that would be one of the more interesting matchups in the spring, and we still may see that. Last year, we saw Jermaine Matthews get some work there at the nickel. Talk about that in the preseason or in the spring, one of the two. I don't really remember, but the coaches said he did a good job. I personally think that he is one of the poorest fits in the secondary to play nickel. You got to be able to take on a running back there. And from what we've seen of Jermaine on film and in the games, he's not really looking for that kind of action, so to speak, which is fine. He doesn't need to. He's a boundary corner, and he's a great one. He just doesn't strike me as a nickel. You got Aaron Scott in that room as well. Aaron Scott, slightly ahead of classmate Bryce West on the depth chart last year. Scott came in a 5-star out of Springfield, 6'2", 195. So he's got the speed, got that cornerback attitude, got the size, and he could potentially play nickel. Is he the best option? How bad does he want to get on the field? That's another thing here. Many high-level corners don't want to play nickel, but some are happy to play it if it gets them on the field earlier. But ultimately, it does, if you stick there, it decreases your NFL value. We're seeing that happen with Hancock right now. But Aaron Scott said recently that he thought he would have been playing last year as a freshman. And obviously, he wasn't ready for that. But now when you look at Jermaine and you look at IGB and you look at Devin Sanchez coming in, like, he's not beating out Jermaine. He's not beating out IGB. And I don't know that there's any way he holds Devin Sanchez off. Devin Sanchez, the maturity of a 24-year-old on top of the physical gifts. And by the way, Devin Sanchez just weighed in at 196, and he puts in his caption here, 179 to 196 in 2 months since he's been with the program. So Sanchez now 6'2", close to 200 pounds, which is the same size as West. And, Sanchez will make short order of running up that board. We all know that. So where does that leave Aaron Scott? Where does that leave Bryce West? Bryce West, 5'11", 190, out of Glenville, same class as Aaron Scott, looked really fast, really good on a couple of plays we saw him in last year. A lot of confidence. And Ted Ginn Sr. speaks very, very highly of this kid. He might just have a real future ahead of him. Don't think it's at nickel. Maybe Miles Lockhart. Miles Lockhart in year 2, recruited specifically to play nickel. 5'9", 198. That's a muscled up dude right there. Not as fast as Lorenzo. I think his 100 meter was 11.33 was his best, but that's still pretty doggone fast. And you've also got Jordan Woods. Jordan Woods, the freshman, who Tim Walton flipped from Cincinnati late in the cycle. After Walton got on him, he saw offers from Miami coming in, and the big schools were lining up. And it's no surprise. This dude's freaky now, 6'4", maybe even 6'5". About 210, and he is a hitter. Somehow the kid was playing cornerback in high school, and he can move pretty damn good. You look at a guy that size at a 3-star at that size, and you're like, okay, what am I missing here? He must be slow. And then you watch him, and he's not slow. And he's not slow, and he's a hitter. And he looks like he has really good natural instincts. I don't know if corner is ultimately his position, but he just might be perfect for nickel. I mean, I honestly think the kid could bulk up and be an outside linebacker, but who knows? He might be perfect for that. Probably not going to happen this year, but in the future, I'm pretty excited about him as a prospect. I really am. But IGB, this is maybe again, we talk about the things that I read that you guys say. A lot of people with the idea of, why don't we put IGB, who's a very physical corner and could definitely be a good nickel, down there, and let Sanchez, Jermaine Matthews, and Aaron Scott be that 3-man corner rotation, which in theory sounds pretty enticing. The thing with that is IGB came back to do what? To raise his draft stock. Moving to nickel, I don't think is really going to help him with that goal. Ultimately, you're going to do whatever's best for the team, but do you want somebody who really doesn't want to be there? I don't know. I just don't know that fits everything they're looking for right there. So we don't know who's going to compete with Lorenzo Styles for that position just yet. But I think ultimately we end up with a starting lineup entering the season with a secondary of Caleb Downs, Jalen McClain, Lorenzo Styles at nickel, and then Jermaine Matthews, IGB, and Devin Sanchez as our boundary corners in some kind of rotation, or who knows, maybe Devin's so good that he just takes over and puts one of them straight on the bench and he never comes off the field. You never know. You never know, man. That's just how good and how mature he is. So now our final question, looking objectively at this crew, not as a Buckeye fan, but totally objectively, is this a championship caliber room, top 5-ish in the country? Is this a championship caliber secondary, top 5-ish in the country, with Caleb Downs, Jalen McClain, Lorenzo Styles, IGB, Jermaine Matthews, Devin Sanchez? And the answer objectively is absolutely. Absolutely. Jermaine Matthews and IGB, these are second-round NFL dudes, could potentially play themselves higher. Devin Sanchez, that's a first-rounder all day. In fact, if you could bet now, Devin Sanchez, if you could get odds on Devin Sanchez being a top 15 NFL draft pick right now, you wouldn't even make the bet because the odds would not even pay enough to entice you to make that bet. Like, this is about as sure a thing as you can get. And add that in to Caleb Downs and Jalen McClain, like this secondary, top 5 all day, championship level unit. It's one that very few teams would not trade for. So I'm really excited about it. Really excited about it. Now let's get to the recruiting side of things. This was the most cut and dry, easiest cornerback class you could have ever had when we look at the top targets. But before we do, I'd like to please ask you to like today's show so that someone else like you may be able to get that pumped out to their feed and introduce them to JUCK on Bucks. And please subscribe if you're not subscribed already. If you're one of our podcast listeners, I'm really looking for a couple of new Apple reviews. If you could help me out with that, please. Make it a funny one. We'll read it here on the show. All right, we're shedding some layers. It's getting a little warm down here. Let's talk about this class of 2026. Now, Tim Walton, obviously a fantastic recruiter. And one of the most beautiful things about recruiting is when you're in a talent-rich state, every once in a while, the state provides and you don't really got to go anywhere. And that's what this class looked like for Tim Walton, with 3 top-notch blue-chip cornerbacks in the state. We're talking Jacob Weatherspoon out of Avon, 5'10", 175, 4-star, top 135 player in the country. Vic Singleton out of Toledo Central Catholic, top 10 overall corner in the country. And Rock Hill, regarded by several services as the number 1 overall cornerback in the country out of my city here in Akron. And it just looked like it was tailor-made. Then you get the emergence of Caden Gebhardt at safety, and it's like, wow, man, this is a crazy Ohio class. So Vic Singleton surprises everybody. Vic Singleton, the one from Toledo, and it looked like, he had big offers, the big dogs, but it looked like it might come down to an Ohio State, Michigan battle for a Toledo kid. We've seen 1,000 times, most recently with Carter Lowe, who Justin Fry and the Buckeyes won. But it looked like that's what it was going to come down to for Vic. And then Vic surprised everybody when he chose Illinois. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on tomorrow's show, because I think there's a whole lot more behind that and a little more of a trend when we talk about a top-notch player going to a school like Illinois. And that was a blow. But Jacob Weatherspoon commits to the Buckeyes. Weatherspoon, a top dog in the class, obviously, not as natural of a corner as Vic Singleton, but a great player, a dude who really lays the wood. He could play safety at the next level as well. Just a tough kid. Here's a couple highlights of him. I mean, just a hitter. He's a hitter and definitely a big time addition to the class. Then you get to the prize jewel of the class, and a guy that I think the most important Ohio prospect in this class of 2026, and that's Rock Hill out of Akron. Hoban, and Rock is almost everybody had him as the number one corner in the country. A couple of them have changed recently. We'll talk about why in a minute, but still two of the services have him as the number one cornerback in the country. And I just want to play a couple plays for you right here. As you see Rock down at the bottom of the screen, recognizes the guy breaking. And here he just saves his team, sprinting 60 yards down the field, lightning fast, and saves a touchdown. This here, watch this. This is not the same play. This is a different team. This is a different play and the same result. Just look at the kid. I mean, just the effort to do that, but the skill to be able to hawk those dudes down. He's just so tremendous. And he's got it all up here too. So I absolutely love him. I think he's the most important home player in this class, the most important home state guy. And Rock is a helicopter player. You've heard of a helicopter parent. This is nothing like that. A helicopter player is a football player that head coaches get in their helicopter to go watch play. That's Rock. James Franklin did that. But he dropped because he's 5'10". And that kind of stuff just rubs me wrong. When you look at the top 18 corners, he's the only one under 6 foot. And it's just like, okay, man, like, I get it. Everybody wants long guys, right? Like, that's the thing. However, you got the guy who puts it all on tape and shows you that, even at a really small guy like Denzel Ward's size at 5'10", you can, in fact, be one of the best cornerbacks in college football, which he will be. Everybody just wants the long guy now. I read something the other day, and it was talking about a safety, and it said, at his length, he'll be able to make up for what he lacks for in speed and quickness. I'm just like, dude, that's not how that works. But anyway, he's a total dog. Everybody wants him. There's no doubt about it. And because you lost Vic, you can't lose Rock. You just can't. If you lose Rock out of this class, you would be looking at 2 cycles that you saw Trey McNutt, Dorian Brew, who considers himself an Ohio high school football product, even though he finished off his career in Texas, Vic Singleton, and Rock Hill all leave the state. You can't have that happen. You absolutely cannot, particularly if you lose another one to Oregon. And they're high on his list, and they're recruiting him hard. But Rock is a must get. Absolutely must get. Now, who else is on this board? And you've got Havon Finney, who just reclassified. He is 6 foot 170, a top 119 overall player out of California, really interested in the Bucks. And this one could be going somewhere. This one could be moving pretty quick. Then you got Donovan Webb out of Texas. This is a top 300 player, and he seems to really like the Buckeyes as well. 6 foot 182. There's some movement there, but this is turning into a recruiting thing here. Okay, so all right, let's just go here. The state of Ohio this year in 2026 gave you a ready-made cornerback class with those 3 we just talked about, a ready-made linebacker class with Sincere Johnson, Storm Miller, Jacoby Clapper, CJ Sana. James Laurinaitis offered all 4 of them, and I think he's going to land 3 of them. So Laurinaitis did the thing, man. 3 Ohio linebackers. Why? Because the state produced them, and when the state produces them, you go get them. Offensive line. Now, we've obviously flip-flopped coaches in the middle of this cycle, so it makes it a little wonky, but you had 5, 4 of whom have Ohio State offers. Who are they? Well, you've got Adam Guthrie, Will Conroy, Sam Greer, Max Riley, and Ben Congdon was the emerging one that was probably going to get an offer here real soon. He committed to Miami on Tuesday morning. Will Conroy committed to Oklahoma. So you're down to 3. Max Riley is down to his last 2, Ohio State and Clemson. Adam Guthrie, it was just announced, is going down to Clemson for the entire week right now. He also tweeted this 2 weeks ago, his undefeated basketball season, and he tweeted this at Coach Matt Luke of Clemson. And in his graphic of his undefeated high school season, he's in a Clemson uniform. There isn't another one of those made up for any other school, and now he's spending the week in Clemson. Should he commit to Clemson? Then now you're down to 2. Should they get Max Riley as well? Well, then now you're down to 1 in Sam Greer, and you would have had 5 Ohio State caliber offensive linemen in the state and landed 1. I'm not worried about that. I think we're going to get a really nice offensive line class. I'm not worried about corner. I think Tim Walton is always going to get a really nice looking cornerback class. But there's a big difference between really nice looking and not taking advantage when you got the talent in the state, because we have seen schools in talent-rich states get away from bringing in their hometown guys in favor of national guys over and over and over again, like Texas, like USC, only for them to come crawling back to what made them successful in the first place, which is the same thing that made Ohio successful in the first place. Ohio State football is built off the backs and is what it is today off of Ohio high school football players. That's just the fact. All right, our final thing today, a new helmet coming to JUCK Studios. I am looking for you to get some nominations in that chat. Nominations for a new helmet. Here's the stipulations. Number 1, I want it to be a team that we discuss, because when it's a team that we discuss, I like to pull. Obviously, today we're talking about Clemson, North Carolina, and Florida State, and I'm just realizing that I didn't get to that segment yet, and I think I'm going to skip it. But my point is, I want it to be a team that somewhat, sometimes comes up in conversation, so I can bring that in to the show. Something I like to do. Makes me feel good. So it's got to be a team that's relevant. I don't really like to do alt helmets. I don't want to do duplicates. Like, you look at this Oregon helmet and say, well, I like the new Oregon helmet better than that one. In which case I'd be like, which one? But I know which one you're talking about. The kind of limier green one. I like it too. But I'm not going to get a duplicate, unless it's a Buckeye helmet. But I want your nominations for those helmets. When I find 4 great nominations, then we're all going to vote on who the next helmet's going to be. And then we'll go from there. So I appreciate you guys. Please do like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.